This is the Retirement Solution Podcast with financial advisor Jon Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital.
It looks like the market is betting that the Fed could raise interest rates come September. One Fed governor who thought rates should have gone up at the last meeting is Neel Kashkari. CNBC asked him if we could see three increases, John, before the end of the year. This is what Neel Kashkari said.
That's not impossible in my view. I mean, if inflation continues to move sideways or even get worse from here, then I think we're going to have to start gradually adjusting interest rates to bring things back down. The conundrum that we're facing is traditional economic analysis says if there's a one-time supply shock, monetary policy should just let that flow through the economy, don't necessarily react to it. But now we've had a series of successive supply shocks over 4 or 5 years. Inflation has been frustratingly persistent. It's our job to get inflation back down.
I don't really understand a lot of what he just said, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he gave a lot of word salad. No, but we can break it down.
Okay.
I mean, the biggest thing to understand is headlines are forecasts. They're not facts.
Okay.
So Kashkari, he's one of the 3 Fed board governors who decided that he wanted to increase rates, not leave them held in the last Fed meeting. So he's one of 3. Now, there were 9 others that said, no, we just need to hold steady, right? So this is probably one of the biggest things that I see that investors, that blows them up, because they hear this information and they hear this forecast, which is not a fact, it's a forecast. And even Kashkari himself said, hold on, we haven't committed to September rate hikes yet. All he said was, because he was asked a kind of a pointed question, could there be up to 3 rate hikes? Well, yeah, there could be. It depends on inflation data. And let's think about that for a second as we're out there, this weekend kind of thinking through things. Have gasoline prices really come down that much? No, not that I can tell. Have beef prices really come down that much? No, not that I can tell. Egg prices are lower than they were when we had all of the bird flu,
right,
or whatever issue was going on there. But I mean, if you look at most prices at the supermarket, they're really not coming down. So when you think about that, that just means that inflation is still hot. That is what the Fed is worried about, right? So when the presidency and the administration is saying we really would like to see rate cuts, what they're saying is we want a healthy economy where people can actually sell or buy a home. Right now, the housing market is very locked, and that is causing a lot of issues, and the administration knows it. We also have higher oil costs. Well, that is a 100% direct effect of what's going on in Iran and the Middle East. That's just how that happens. Now, in the long run, the administration will probably tell us it was still the right move, even though we are feeling a lot of discomfort right now. In the long run, it's still the right move. But that being the case, inflation is real. One of the things that Trump said was, hey, listen, under that other guy's leadership, we had inflation nearing double digits. He was talking about inflation. Now, we're nowhere near that right now, but we're still pretty hot. And the Fed is worried about that, because if we don't increase rates and things keep getting expensive, ladies and gentlemen, you could be a millionaire and have a hard time with your grocery bill. That is not a joke, because when we have to go to get healthcare or gasoline, or pay for repairs on our homes, even if we are mortgage free, we still got to repair the thing, or we have the cost of the grocery. That's real. That affects Main Street America. It has nothing to do with Wall Street. So when we look at all those situations, what we have to understand is we can't be reactive. We need a plan that can accommodate that. But inflation is going to be a big deal. And I think it could be a reason why we would see a recession. I don't know. The numbers that I'm looking at, some of them, literally 50% say things are looking okay. They're still a little expensive out there in the market, but they're okay. And the other 50% says, oh no, we could easily see a 30 to 45% drop. No joke. Depending, not really on the midterm election, depending on really 2 major factors. Is inflation going to keep getting too hot, and can their wages keep up with the cost of living? That will destroy any community, no matter where, no matter what part of the planet, no matter what part of history you look at. If things cost too much to live there, it destroyed Germany, it destroyed Portugal, it destroyed Mexico in the 1970s. It destroyed a lot of other places in recent history. People are alive that remember hearing those stories or are aware of it. It can absolutely happen here too. So the Fed is trying to do the right thing, but I would not listen to what they say, at least especially when they're forecasting. I wouldn't look at that as the gospel. The better thing to do is have a retirement plan in place where it doesn't matter. That's important.
That's what you're here to help us with, of course, having a plan in place that we can lean back on even when things get rocky in the headlines, in the economy, et cetera. Jon and his team, they are here to help you with that. Reach out, 502-317 0840 is our number. You can call or send a text to that message. Just text the word plan and we'll text you back a link to our calendar. You can set an appointment to begin the conversation with Jon and his team right there from your smartphone. 502-317-0840 or find us anytime, retirementsolutionradio.com. What I think is also interesting for folks that you work with that are near in retirement, Jon, is how higher rates as an economy, as a people, we're taught that's a bad thing. But for retirees, higher rates, there's a lot of opportunity there. One, we're combating inflation, which is a big problem for retirees. We want to combat that. Two, higher rates often mean opportunity for retirees' money, does it not?
Oh, absolutely. So I think what messes up most people is they try to time this stuff. They hear, rates may go up. They're going to time it. So those that looked and thought at the beginning of the year that interest rates would be falling, right?
Yeah.
They're having a little bit more punishing of a situation in their portfolios than those that just said, I don't know. All I know is that I can take this much risk because the markets have done pretty well, right? But if we were thinking rates were going to decrease and that was going to fuel something, that hasn't been so good. The one thing to understand about this is that if you are a borrower, if you owe money on credit cards or you have a floating rate mortgage, then that's where higher rates are not very good. They kind of punish us, So if you thought you were paying 11% on that credit card 6 years ago when interest rates were almost zero, and now it may be like 28% or whatever that number is, that hurts, right? Yeah. If you used to have a 2.25% or 2.5% fixed mortgage, and then you want to change houses, maybe it's just not the right house anymore, and you need a mortgage, and now you're finding those rates are 6.5% to closer to 7%. That hurts. You can't afford as much house, right? Mm-hmm. So that is the negative side. Now, the positive side, if you're a net saver, you have money in income producing assets like CDs or money market or certain types of bonds or fixed insurance contracts or annuities or things like that. Higher rates are great because we get paid more, right? We're almost acting a little bit like the banker. We're collecting the interest from the money that we've quote unquote loaned out. So it's good, right? So the one thing to understand, because I talk to people all the time, they're like, Jon, the rates are higher. I don't want to do anything else because, my CD is paying 4.1 or 4.2 or whatever the number is. But the whole point of this conversation is, what was inflation rate? The inflation rate was nearly 4%. And on top of that, that's not include taxation.
Right.
So if you have a taxable account with a CD in it, CD is not a certificate of deposit. That stands for certificate of depreciation, because by the time you've collected that bank payment and paid your taxes on it, you actually did not beat inflation. So the thing of it is, whether we're worried about rates going up or down, there are all kinds of strategies out there where you can take advantage of the higher interest rates, but still safeguard your money. Right? That's the biggest piece. It's not trying to figure out and forecast what's going to happen with rates next. It's, hey, how will my plan work if rates move up? Okay. How will it work when rates go down? And do I have to do anything? If the answer is no, you don't have to do anything, it automatically does that. That's probably a good plan, because none of us know what's going to happen. Me, probably least of anyone. And the Fed doesn't even know.
Right.
3 of the 12 Fed governors have no idea what it all is going to happen. And again, it's all on future data. Once the data comes out, we'll know. So don't spend all the time trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Figure out how you're planning for, how you're prepared for it, so that no matter what happens, you're there. That's the big point.
That's the point of meeting with Jon and his team, getting to work on a plan so that you don't have to worry about these things. You can embrace the opportunity. You can have more confidence despite what's going on in the world around you. At J. Hagan Capital, they are ready to help you get started on a plan for this next phase. Reach out to us. 502-317-0840 is our number. You can call to set a time on the calendar or send a text to that number. Just text the word PLAN, PLAN, to 502-317-0840. We're going to text you back a link to our calendar. You can set an appointment right there from your smartphone. You can also find us at retirementsolutionradio.com, or if you're ready to begin the conversation about your own retirement solution, this plan that Jon and his team ready to create for you. No fee, no obligation, just empowering you with information. Let's start. 502-317-0840 is the number to dial to do just that, or go to retirementsolutionradio.com. All right. So if you're a business owner, it's time for you to mind your business, Jon.
Mind your business.
Mind your business. It's one of my favorite expressions in life to use. Mind your business. But for small business owners, really, we're going to dig in. And I mean, you can speak so empathetically to this space as a small business owner yourself, sir.
Sure.
So thinking about what you spend your life doing, pouring into this business, when you get closer to retirement, you anticipate that the sale of that business is what's going to fund the next phase of your life. Well, I want to talk about the story of Gary. Gary is from Georgia. He owns an optometry business, multiple locations, was initially valued at about $4 million, John. And at about the time he wanted to retire, a national chain swooped in and opened some locations nearby, and the value of his business went down to $2.5 million. So like that, he lost the value of about $1.5 million, obviously changing the plans that he had for his own retirement.
Sure.
It's just one area that things can get wonky for small business owners when they get close to retirement, John. But you have had a lot of experience helping small business owners, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. Preparation, planning, what can be done? I mean, I don't know if anything can be done with Gary in this situation.
It's one of those things, and it's unbelievably unfortunate. And sadly, I hear it all the time.
Really?
Someone has built a great business. They thought that they were going to give it over to their kids, but their kids don't want it, can't run it. And then, unfortunately, the way they built that practice, it does not have much of a marketable value. Think about it. When you think about some of those best family-owned businesses that you've ever been to, maybe the restaurant that's been in operation for 50 consistent years, when you see how much those owners spend there, they might be spending 70, 80, 90 hours.
My next door neighbors, they owned a jewelry shop, and they closed it a couple years ago because their daughters didn't want it. But Jill was telling me she and her husband, they could never go on vacation together for like 20 years. They had to have separate family vacations. What kind of life are you living? That's exactly it.
And the whole point is sometimes you do this like, what am I doing this for? It's almost all for naught. But the reason that they were successful in the front end is because they were passionate. Yeah. They loved it.
That's right.
They enjoyed it. But very few people want to pay money to walk into a full-time job. 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They don't, which is why, and this is for all of us to understand how private equity works. This is where those private equity firms will come in, and they will understand what will it truly cost someone to come in there and run that operation, put some systems and controls in there, or try to keep the recipes. I'm just using a restaurant as an example.
Yeah.
Try to keep the recipes the same so they don't mess up any of the clients. But then how can they turn that and duplicate it? How can they do not just one footprint? How can they add a second store and a third store? That's what they're looking for. Now, what they're willing to pay for that, they often call a multiple based on earnings. How many multiples of your earnings? So if you make $400,000, a multiple of 1 means that they would pay you $400,000 for that restaurant or that business in that situation. So if you get a 3 times multiple, that'd be $1.2 million. Not so bad. Now, here's my question. If it requires all that energy and effort, who is going to pay you $1.2 million for them to walk into a 70 or 80 hour a week job? Very few people, right? So this is the one thing that I always talk to all the small business owners I can about is like, are you replaceable and at what cost? If you weren't there, what would it be? Because that is one of the first and foremost things. And can we actually have a value to the sale of our business? Because handing it to the kids, people think that's a great thing too. Is it? Because if you can actually get a tangible value for the sale of your business, that may be better than what your kids can afford to give you. Right. And that may be more than unfortunately, I hate to say it, but it's true, the work ethic and the commitment of that next generation to do that. So when it comes down to business owners, when I hear the story that you just made about Gary, thought his business was worth $4 million. National chain came in, buka hookah hookah. Now he's really only 2.5 million, and it changed everything. The real issue was not the national chain. It was his concentration of his money primarily in only his business. That is really the biggest thing. So whether it would be no different, right? Because that's almost a 40% hit. From 4 million to 2.5 is about a 40% hit. Does that kind of sound like the last couple major stock market decreases? 2008 was roughly a 40% hit. 2000 to 2002 in the market was around a 54% hit, but the NASDAQ took almost a 78% hit. So whether it's a business sale or whether it's a market, sometimes when something comes in and punishes you and you weren't prepared for it or you didn't have enough diversification, that's a big one.
By the way, if you're a small business owner, if you've got questions for Jon and his team, you're getting close to retirement, you want to know more about what your options are, reach out to us, 502-317-0840. You can call or text that number, 502-317-0840. You mentioned the idea of a small business owner, Gary, for example. He had everything in his businesses. For somebody who's a small business owner, Jon, though, how do they diversify? You're saying they need to diversify into other assets. How do they do that?
Well, one of the greatest things to do, and so few people do it correctly, is to have their own solo 401k. If you're a small person, if you're a smaller company, you can actually maximize the 401k laws and you can put up to $80,000 a year. Now, technically, see, that's not in your business anymore. That is money that's going to you. You get to defer all the taxes on it. It goes into the investments that you choose based on that 401k that you utilize. And you can actually get that money technically outside of the business, right? But still not pay taxes.
Got it.
Now, there's a much better way to consider that, where if you can actually use a cash balance plan. Now, cash balance plans are a little bit more sophisticated, but you can put up to $200,000 to $300,000 a year without taxation into the owner's name. That means that you can diffuse and to get that money out of the business correctly without paying taxes on doing it. Now, guys, Gary, if he had been doing this over all those years, don't take out so much money. Don't pull that out. Instead, defer your future exit strategy by putting potentially $200,000 to $300,000 a year into your own name in more liquid assets that have nothing to do with your business sale, have nothing to do with it at all. And by doing that, someone that's a business owner in their 50s or 60s, they can put away $2 to $3 million, which may be more than they could actually even get on the exit strategy in the back end anyway. So that is a big one. Now, what I mentioned earlier is probably one of the biggest factors. You do not want your future wealth that you're selling, you don't want it to wear your name, your logo, right? You really need to understand that if you want to exit a business, it has to rely on someone other than you. Because everyone, they want you. You're the expert of being that dentist. Your name is on the practice. Very different, right? If your name is on the practice, it's very different than if it's just like big city dentistry, right? If you sold big city dentistry, no one's expecting to see that one person. Think about these things when you're looking at branding. Talk to your CPA or your tax attorney about it. To call our office. The whole point is this is a big factor. I'm actually a CPA, which is a certified exit planning analyst. My whole point is how can we get the clients, the business owners, exit valuation as high as we can, and at what point in time, right? Usually when someone says, Jon, I've about had it. I can't do any more of this. I am hanging this sucker up.
Mind your business.
That's right. You mind yours. Take this job and shove it. By the point they've got there, the hard work has not often been done. It often takes 3 to 5 years to get a business in saleable mode. It really does. We got to find out where are the gaps, where are the pieces of the puzzle that the owner goes in on Sunday morning and scrubs the toilets himself. Why? Because he wants it right and he doesn't rely on staff to do it, right? But those things, who's going to do that when you're not there? Because those little dinky things make major differences in the long runs on valuation. So we have to make sure that we're understanding how do we increase that market valuation? Should the kids buy it from you versus you hand it over to them? Skin in the game is really, really, really important. So we want to make sure we understand if you want a dream retirement, we have to actually plan for it. The dreams can become nightmares very quickly if all of a sudden a national chain comes in, or if anyone understands your profitability margins and they've been good, they're going to come in and squeeze you. When they see that there's that much profitability in an area or in an industry, they will come in. By the way, private equity is taking over so much of small, middle America mom and pop shops that used to do a great job. And unfortunately, we're losing the skill. We're losing the quality. We are losing so many things to a corporate faceless mass that I don't think is great. Right? We used to talk back in the day how when Walmart went into some areas, it shut down all the mom and pop shops, right? And that's been an issue. Now we're looking at that, but we're seeing it not in Walmart anymore for selling retail stuff, but the big PE firms on legal, on tax, on planning, on everything from dental to optometry to all those things. That's what we're seeing. And they're able to command different prices and they're able to change things around. So it's a big deal. And the one last thing I'd say when we're trying to figure out what should we consider doing, look at creating your own future buyer. If you have people in your firm that you think, man, these people could hack it, even if they don't have money, there are so many different ways that you can actually get someone trained to be your true successor and they can bow you out over time. Or an ESOP, employee stock ownership plan, where you technically on your exit strategy, sell it to those great employees that have made it what it is anyway, right? When you look at some of these things, and again, this is all just understanding exit planning. How do we not get in Gary's situation?
Yeah.
How can we put ourselves in a better situation where we get a higher multiple, or no one wants to go to that big PE shop or that other national chain because they like the people that they've been working with. We just want to know the various ways to do that. That is what we do in our practice. Try to find out, what does your dream look like? What do you want your business dream to work like? Because they're two completely different things.
Right.
And you want them to actually speak to each other to give you enough time and runway to get that plane off the ground. And hopefully that plane lands where you want it to, whether it's in the French Riviera or the redneck Riviera or anywhere in between, right? That we might want to retire or hang out with our grandkids. We just want to make sure we got enough runway to get that sucker up and that we know where we're landing in the back end. That is what makes a business sale a dream instead of a nightmare.
If you own a business and you are getting closer to retirement and you want to ensure that you don't end up in Gary's situation, let's start the conversation. That number to dial, 502-317-0840. 502-317-0840. You can call or send a text to that number. Just text the word plan, and we will text you back a link to our calendar. You can choose a time to meet with Jon and his team right there from your smartphone. If you are near or in retirement, this is a no-fee, no-obligation review process to empower you with information about what your options are. And when you are a small business owner, you've worked so hard, you've poured your life into it. You don't want to end up in a vulnerable situation, having less money than you thought, or just an overall confusing, chaotic situation simply because you didn't take the time to plan. Jon and his team, they have helped many small business owners. They can help you as well. 502-317-0840 is the number to dial right now. You can also go to the website. It's retirementsolutionradio.com, or send a text or give us a call. 502-317-0840. All right, let's talk taxes. Because newsflash, they're always a moving target.
Isn't that the truth?
It's their game, Jon. It's their world. We're just living in it, trying to be honest citizens of America. And this is fortunately not happening here, and I feel always the news of California and New York, it's like so crazy, the stuff that comes out of those two areas in particular. So New York City is proposing what's known as a pied-à-terre.
Yeah.
They make it sound fancy and lovely. Pied-à-terre.
If we make it sound French, it sounds good. So let's do that and say, hey, we're going to tax you at the yin-yang, right?
Pied-à-terre, what's that? Is that one of those little cakes?
Oh, yeah. I love those.
They're
yeah,
so
with a little
good.
frosting. Those are delicious.
A little flour on top? No, ma'am, or sir. A pied-à-terre, it's a tax aimed at certain high-value second homes. So city officials actually recently published a database showing thousands of properties that could potentially be affected. This is the thing. Whether or not you agree with this tax, it's not really your problem unless you have a second home in New York City. The big takeaway here, Jon, is that tax policy, as I said previous, it's always a moving target. Sometimes it's a new property tax. Sometimes it's an income tax or an estate tax, or Medicare rules come into play. So when building out plans, how do you build in flexibility to adapt with ever-changing tax laws?
I mean, this is probably one of those biggest issues on why we brought CPAs and tax attorneys on our staff in-house, in the firm. Because these are things that were affecting me personally. I'm like, I don't understand how the real estate laws work in South Carolina. I don't understand exactly how the tax structure works in Florida. If I don't live in Florida or Texas or Tennessee full time, what portion of my income would be taxed that way? And we were dealing with this because we had a lot of clients. They're saying, hey, Jon, I'm thinking I'm going to get a house maybe on the lake on Dale Hollow on the Tennessee side. If I do that, they got no state tax. So if I'm there, how long do I have to be there to consider that my residence, da-da-da-da-da-da? And if I decide I'm consulting, then is that Tennessee state income tax or is that Kentucky? All these things, guys, these are real and they happen every day, to the point to where is your income from your pension taxed at the state that you earned it in or the state you reside in then, right?
Ooh. So many parts. Yeah. Okay.
Wow. And that's just the simple parts, right? So, I mean, it really is. It really is. And those are literally some of the simplest pieces of the puzzle. Yeah. Do you actually have an occupational tax? Do you have a resident tax for that township inside of that city, inside of that state, inside of that, right? And it happens all the time. And I see this. Okay. And I was just like, oh my gosh. It's so much to think about, and there's so many moving pieces. And you got clients in Texas, you got clients in Tennessee, clients in Florida, clients in literally Hawaii. And it's just like, oh my gosh, what just changed for them? How does that change the plan? It's a big deal. But the one thing that I want to say, this is so important. When taxes go on the books, it is really, really stinking hard to get them off. And I'm going to use a little bit of history on this one because people don't necessarily know. You know, when the United States was founded in 1776, we did not have an income tax. The income tax did not come to the United States until 1913. And it was a 1% tax, 1%. And here's the big one, guys. It was slated to come off of the books in 100 years. Let me say that one more time. It was originally income tax for the federal government was 1%. We were promised, then it was supposed to get been gotten rid of after 100 years. Well, that would have been 2013. 2013 came and went. And did all the taxes go away? No.
Yeah.
And were we only paying 1% still by 2013? No. And so the point is, it is really hard to get taxes off the system. Even the administration, when they were trying to do the tariffs, right? They were trying to punish the other countries for treating us unfairly when they had access to our market system, our economy. We allowed them to make tremendous amounts of money, and they did not treat us fairly. And so Trump was like, no, we don't like the way you're negotiating. We want, no, we're going to tariff you. And do you know what the federal government came out and said? The Supreme Court said, that's not 100% legal. Now, I don't know what creates the legality or not. I'm not into the mix on that. That's political that I don't really care about. But the point is that even when the president of the United States was trying to find a way to shore things up, to raise money for the country that did not cost the backs of taxpayers, he was told no. Now, if the president of the United States can't get something changed, regardless of this president or a different president or the one after this, that's not necessarily a good thing. And my point to all that is when tax rates are on there, they almost don't come off. So understand the tax rates, understand the tax laws, or make sure your financial people who are building your plans do.
By the way, if you're looking for somebody who can help you understand the tax rules and how they apply to you at J. Hagan Capital, Jon and his team, they can be those people. Let's start the conversation. The number you're dialing, 502-317-0840. You can call or send a text to that number, 502-317-0840. You can also go to the website. It's retirementsolutionradio.com, or the number you're dialing right now, 502-317-0840.
So there are 3 individual tax buckets that all of us could invest in at any given point in time. There's a taxable account, and that's the money that you know you got it because you get a 1099 every year. 1099 interest, 1099 dividend. And you know you get that. That's in a taxable account. So every year, that little love note that comes from the government, it says, hey, you made some money. So glad you were allowed to make that money. You can thank us for our benevolence. But now that we've given you access to that money, we need to take a little bit. It'd be fine if you just hand over a little bit, maybe. It'd be nice. That is a 1099. It says you made money and you owe us some, right? That's the little government love note. That's just how it goes. So that's how you know it's a taxable account. Then we have our tax-deferred accounts. Now, this is a little bit different. This has a little bit of a different history. But those tax-deferred accounts, we know we owe the government. We know we do.
Yeah.
But for right now, we're allowed to defer it. We say, okay, we want to make some money. And we know you're allowing us to make money. And we promise that we're going to pay you some money later, but not today. And whenever we pull that money out, we will get a different type of love note. And that will come in the form of a distribution from that IRA or 401k or whatever it is. And then we have to pay the government whatever it is they say we owe at that point in time. This is where the majority of us have saved our money for retirement. This is just the majority. And in 2016, Hillary Clinton knew that darn well. And she actually had a plan. And by the way, guys, this is not a political comment because the math behind the plan was sound. She said, listen,
it worked.
All these people, yes. Instead of ticking off the entire American population by putting a 1% tax on and then not giving them any opportunity, here's what we're going to do. We instead are going to say, hey, you put all those money into quote unquote retirement accounts, those tax deferred accounts. You know you owe the government. Here's what we're going to do. While you're alive and while your spouse is alive, so if you put that money in and then you pass away, your spouse is still allowed to maintain that account. That's fine and not pay all the taxes yet. But when she passes away or when they pass away, then you're going to pay the government. But you're not going to pay a certain rate. You're going to pay a rate that we now tell you're going to pay. Her number was about 67%.
I was going to say, wasn't it over 60%?
67%.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is she says, but not everyone will have to pay that. Only the wealthy people will have to pay that 67% before it goes to the next generation. Heather, what do you think her amount was that you had to be worth to be considered wealthy?
When you say only the wealthy, I mean, your brain immediately goes, okay, so anybody that has $10 million or $5 million saved.
I think that those would be really great assumptions.
Right.
No, $300,000.
Amazing.
If you were worth more than $300,000, congratulations,
Wow.
You are wealthy. And so your heirs would be forced to settle up. That tax bill, in her example, is right close to 67%, would go to the government before it would go to your heirs. Now, here's the question. Why on earth would someone suggest that? Well, because if the government actually took that money in on all those tax deferred earnings, and again, the covenant, the promise was between you who put that money in and the government. Well, they're gone. So their retirement's over. Their spouse is gone. They're definitely the retirement's over.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever's in there, the government is entitled to whatever they say. That's the big one. That's where the majority of us have our money. So do you understand why it's so important and why I am so feverish every week to talk about understand where taxes came from, understand where they're trending, where they are now, and where they may be heading, right? Because at $40 trillion of national debt, our country does not have that many more kicks of that can before we come directly up into either a brick wall or a black hole, and it just sinks down. I don't know which is going to happen. I have no concept. I can't even think about that. That's just too big of a deal. But I can understand we would hate for the fact that the money that we've saved to utilize for our lives or for our children be sucked up by the government because they made missteps in their finances and they need to take more from us. So because of that, there's all kinds of planning things that we can do to remove or reduce that potential exposure to all those things. If we've got millions of dollars in tax deferred accounts, guys, you should just seek out a second opinion. It doesn't have to be us, but you want someone who understands the tax implication, not the finance, the tax implication. So do they have CPAs on staff, tax attorneys on staff? Do you need to look at trust jurisdictions? Do you need to look at deferred sales trust? What do you need to consider to help remove that potential nasty liability out of your financial life? It's a big one. It's a big one. So when we're looking at taxes, we just recently saw that New York is going to reinstitute a new tax. It never was gotten rid of, but it was basically declared dead by most tax gurus in 2019. Well, they decided to revive it. Why? Because now they have a socialist mayor who needs money to prop up his socialist agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, they're going back to that. Do you think that all of those type of laws that are on the books, if the wrong guy is elected, won't come back in favor? They will, guys. So we have to understand, to wait is a plan. It's probably a plan to fail. So procrastination hurts more people than not even having the best plan. Procrastination is the true culprit to destroy wealth. To actually have a plan, even if you have to tweak it whenever they change tax laws, because that's what we do in our office. Every year that they make major tax changes, we look, hey, what did we build? Does that still work for that client? What about that client? Because they're all different. Does it still work? If it does, we leave it alone. But if there's little things that we can do, and they're not all negative, sometimes it's like, ooh, now we can do this. Now, instead of only putting 50 grand in that 401k to defer for right now, we can do 80 grand in that year. And by the way, next year when they retire, we can pull that money out at a much reduced tax rate because we have a plan for it. And we know that should save us tens of thousands of dollars in taxes just on 1 year. Guys, those are the big pieces of the puzzle. Not how's my stock doing? How's my bond doing? What's my CD rate? Those major issues that come down to the broad strokes of your strategy. That's a big one. When it comes to taxes, it's one of the biggest things that we can do for ourselves is understand that our tax plan needs to be an actual plan that we can stick to. If we do that, we'll probably win in the long run.
Let's begin the conversation helping you understand about your plan, your money, your future. It's retirementsolutionshow.com or just click on the links we've got posted in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solution Podcast with Jon Hicks. Begin the conversation about your savings plan with Jon and the team at J. Hagan Capital by visiting retirementsolutionradio.com. Be sure to listen to Jon's radio show, The Retirement Solution, Saturdays at 8 a.m. and Sundays at 9 a.m. on News Radio 840 WHAS.
J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is licensed in your state, please call 502-690-5635. J. Hagan Capital Incorporated is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through J. Hagan Capital, LLC, NPN number 1882794.